All right, ready, set, go.
Ready, set, go.
Welcome to Shift Hits the Fan. Welcome, Shifties.
Welcome, shift heads. Just as we start, I start choking.
Yeah, might as well be dying right at the
Might
start,
as
right
well.
at the birth.
This is the perfect segue, dying, to talk about meditation, because that's what we wanted to talk about after the last call. So here we are, talking to you,
The
talking.
meditation of death and rebirth.
Yes, the point of meditation, the benefits of meditation, the what would you say? You're the real meditator here.
You do a lot of energy work, and a lot of the energy work is just meditation, anyways.
Hmm.
Um, Meditation. There's Sadhguru had this thought that he threw out there that you don't meditate, but you can be meditative. And to me, it's saying that it's like, what is your awareness? Like, where is you? How aware are you? How present are you? And present is a bad thing to say too, because you're always present. Whether you're bringing the past or the future into the present moment, whatever you're creating in that moment, you're always present. So whenever you get into that, be present. What does that mean? I'm always present. I just might not be realizing what is present at the moment.
Hmm.
And but I think it comes down to like, where are you putting your awareness? Because there's so many different ways to meditate. Even when I'm on the computer and doing some engineering work, I'm meditating on what's in front of me. I'm creating these mental things, these mental constructs and images, and putting it down on something. And it's really more, where are we placing our awareness? Where do we want to put our focus on? Because I even could see, and I think this is part of my perhaps ADHD, um, is that whenever I watch a movie or watch a show or watch TV, my whole body is absorbed into what's happening in that program, and nothing else is going on around me. And in a way, that is a meditation, to be so focused and aware of what's happening on the screen and the storyline and the feelings that are bringing up into my body. That could be considered a meditation.
Hmm.
But I think what I like to do with my meditations is I like to just, it's it's decrease the stimulation and allow my body to be the stimulation, and allow the mind and the body to be the only stimulants that are happening. And that to me is a very restorative meditation. And the ones where you get so deep into the thoughts, into the things that are happening, that's that to me is the meditation that helps a lot.
Hmm.
I think in a lot of the stuff that we're doing with healing and shifting ourselves.
I think that's where like mindfulness comes in. Like, because if you're in constant meditation, right, you're constantly present, you're always meditating because you're so focused on whatever, even if you're jumping from one thing to the other, you're fully present to each of those things at that time until the next thing takes you out. But the mindfulness, like being mindful about where your attention goes, I think is what people are trying to get to, but they're not, they have these things as separate things, right? But one is just a context or intentionality about the other. I think it just it it's something to add the next level of the being present, because like you said, whatever it is that you're bringing, everything's happening simultaneously. So if you're focused on something that happened in the past and you're dwelling in it, you're still dwelling in the present, but it's but it's colored by the past, and that's why they say you're going to manifest the same thing if you're from the past if you keep dwelling in it, right? um and I think that is the point of meditation or mindfulness, is to put the the responsibility back into your hands, and not responsibility like you had anything to do with, like it's your fault, but responsibility like from this point on I actually have a say in the matter, because I know now, with this new information, I know now what I'm doing.
You're taking that ability to respond back onto yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
I
And
really liked what you were saying there with levels. And again, we were talking about Inception or just before this, the levels of dreams.
mhm,
And that gets into our levels of reality. And the life is so dynamic. You know, we think about these past creations or these future creations, these projections that we're having, like I want the future to be this way, or we're trying to predict the future, or we're creating anxiety in our body because of something that might happen in the future, or anxiety in our body because of things that have happened in the past. And if you think about what the future is, it's really just a recreation of past events. Um, those are all things that are just being built inside our mind, and our body is responding to it. And so I think it gets into these levels of, here's this creative mind that is doing some beautiful work inside of us, creating reactions in our body. And then you get a little bit deeper and it's like, all right, well, what's happening right now that's creating my thoughts? And you can get a level deeper and you say, all right, well, what's happening with my body? Like what are the sensations happening in my body? And you step further out of that and you become this observer almost. And this was always something that was weird for me, is that I would ask my friends this. I'm like, do you ever have like the thought before the thought? Like the intention that happens before the thought? Like you tell yourself to think this thought, and then it's like a secondary voice behind the thought, and people just look at me like, what are you talking about?
who are
But I
you?
think that's, yeah, I think that's like the observer. And I don't know if anybody relates to this, but that, to me, that's the observer, the real consciousness that's inside of us, just watching all of these things happen, watching the thoughts, watching the sensations in the body, watching the things that are happening around us. And I think some people would say that that is like our true self, or our true consciousness is just that observer.
Mhm.
And so you, in meditation, you can get into all of these different ranges, these different levels and depths of almost this creative aspect in a lot of ways.
That reminds me of the meditation that Solma, which if y'all have been following along, Solma has been on this podcast with us. she
That
she
we took
guides
down.
us. What's that?
The one that we took down.
No, I put it back up. I
Ah,
revised it and put it back up. So it went up last week with the last one. So she's a shaman, medicine woman, and she will sometimes guide us through meditation in our, in our meditation community. And she took us through this. I mean, she has this process that she'll often do of guiding you through the different levels of the earth. And normally I follow, because I'm like a good student, I will just do whatever the teacher tells me to do, and I visualize according to what she's handing me. But this time I couldn't visualize anything outside of, because I couldn't see the earth itself. I was actually taking that journey through myself and the different layers of myself. I haven't been the same since. Like I've been sick. I've been trying to work through the stuff that's come up out of that. But from that perspective that you were talking about of the observer, just like really noticing the where I keep things in my body. To learn to hold it. What came up for me, and I posted this in one of the servers, my experience of the connection between like the emerald tablets, as above, or the above is of the below and the below is of the above, and all this. As I'm going through this journey through myself, I'm realizing what connected that process with the process of going through myself, and how we gently and wisely go from heaven to earth, and earth to heaven is I mean, heaven is the mind realm, the earth is you. So that's why I couldn't get out of taking this journey through the earth through me. It was, I couldn't see anything else. But the layer of the mushrooms that she takes us through is where I made the connection. Is like when we bring something out to observe it, we're bringing it out to the realm of the heaven, the mind, before it becomes manifest. And if we're gentle with it, if we're holding it, if we're treating it as if it's another being that we just love and adore and that we have compassion for, but we unidentify with it, that's being gentle and wise with it. But if we just let internalize things immediately, if we're reactive, if we make it mean something about it, we bypass that first level of the skin, of the mushrooms, right? That will take something, anything, the worst things, and transmute it and turn it to medicine. And that's what we're doing, is we're taking poison to medicine when we can learn to just hold whatever it is that's coming to us, that we bring into the realm of thought and observation and mindfulness. But we're bringing it outside of us to look at it and observe it. So it's the mushrooms that made the connection for me, that you know, they've been my teachers for a few years now. And I didn't make that connection until this, it was on Monday, I think. It's Friday now. And then seeing Inception after that, it's like, oh my gosh, this is all just coming together. Whoa, okay. Which is what I'm asking for. Like, this is what I do in meditation. And I think I don't meditate very well because of how the world wants you to think meditation is supposed to look. And not necessarily the world, but people in the world, the loudest voices, the ones that when you think of meditation and why you do or don't do it, those voices, the ones that have stuck with you, they've just I mean, a lot of people just trying to sell something. They want to sell you their course. This is why we're doing this freely, you know, so that the information is out there, so that you know that you don't have to pay for anything. The best things in life are free, literally. Everything you need is right here. But yeah, that making the connection of like when you get to process this thing from the thought realm with love, that's when it's going to be it's going to fizzle out, but you're going to get to the core of like who you are. You're going to get clearer that wasn't who you are. um and if you keep going that back and forth route, gentle and wise, heaven to earth, earth to heaven, over and over, you're just gonna, that's where your freedom is. That's where your inner peace is. That's where the world cannot overcome you. And that's going to shift you from the dream within the dream within the dream. Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, it reminds me of this beautiful imagery that I've gained of individuation. And I've never studied Carl Jung and his idea of individuation, not on a big level, but just taking that word apart and
Individuation.
yeah, so like the process of individualizing, the process of becoming indivisible. And to me, it's, for one, it's digging deep into yourself, digging deep in what is your true self. And if you look at a lot of different meditation ideas out there, a lot of Buddhism, they say, I am not the body, I'm not the mind. That's the Isha Kriya meditation. You repeat that as a mantra. And you realize that when you realize that you aren't the body and you aren't your mind, that these are two separate things that are almost just like baggage in this earth. It's just a thing that we are experiencing at the moment that we seem to be connected to. You start looking at all these different elements of these different, like the sensations in your body. And reading, a while back ago, I read "This Is Your Body on or This Is Your Brain on Parasites," and it talks about all these different parasites, the bacteria in your gut, the different things happening in your body that aren't even a part of your DNA cells specifically, and how they cause your brain to think. Like you start thinking about sugar, and it's because the bacteria in your gut or the microbiome down there is saying, all right, we're going to produce some chemicals and send it up to the brain. And the brain's going to be like, where's my donut? And so you start looking at all these different levels and you get down to like the organs, and the organs are telling.
I donut. Now that you talk about it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you get down into like the organs, and the organs are trying to operate on a certain level of self, and then you get down even deeper into like the cellular level, and each cell has this identity of self, of it being some sort of individual, and it's producing whatever purpose it's designed to do. And even deeper than that, you get into atoms and quantum mechanics and all of these different things that have their own identity of self, their own spatial existence that's inside of them. And you start to realize this body is just a community. Like when I realized that I wasn't my body, I was like, this is like a pet. This is like a little pet that just happens to follow along with everything else that I do, and loves me so much that it will do anything that I ask it to do. And so you start picking all these different things apart. And when you realize that they aren't you, you start to realize that it needs its own freedom. Like when you love someone, and when you are a friend, a true friend, like the meaning of friend, breaking apart all the sounds and syllables. This is a project that one of my friends and I are doing. When you look at friend, it comes from this pi root of PRI, and it has the root of freedom in it, of being free, allowing freedom amongst each other.
Love that.
And so all of these different selves are inside of us. You want to start giving them their freedom to act according to the way that they feel they need to act.
Mm-hmm.
And you start giving this freedom to all of these different aspects of life, and suddenly they want to follow you. You don't want to follow someone who's telling you what to do. That creates rebellion and it creates resentment, but you want to follow someone who gives you the freedom. You want to be with that person, that in that space, that really listens to you and allows you to just be you. and you'll do whatever they want to do because they've given you that.
Mhm.
Because you're not working against each other. You're just playing at that point.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how I've started seeing meditation as like, all right, there's these different aspects in my mind happening. There's these sensations in my body. Just be.
Mhm.
And a lot of times when I don't like something, I'll just let it sit there and I'll just listen to it. And eventually it runs its course and then it's gone. And I'm like, oh, it's, it's just this constant change until eventually all this energy runs out and you're just left sitting there, just kind of in your own little world, blissfully in the space of almost bliss that you don't really want to come out of because you just you've let everything go.
And I want to reiterate and emphasize that when your friends don't want to, don't do what you want, it's because they haven't been heard. It's because they've been being controlled. They've been judged. They've been criticized and shamed and guilted and all of that stuff that we do to ourselves. You're doing that to your community. You're, you're never alone. You're a community of trillions of cells and memories, and and each one of these cells has, has exactly what everything else has. Um, to like your that one cell can create you all over again just from the memory, right? So when you've got all this stuff going on, the parasites, the little bugs, whatever it is that lives in here, when you're doing all of that, you think you're doing it to yourself, but it's everybody in there, except for maybe the things that you do love about yourself. Those are like your saving grace, right? The things that, well, like if you feel you're not somebody who's going to give up, it's because you've given enough love to the stuff. They're the ones that are helping you fight the fight and work through the stuff. It's because you're doing enough of that, right? So just keep building on it, keep listening, keep hugging it and holding it, and it doesn't matter what anybody calls it, narcissism, whatever, it that's just made up to, those are the things that we are gripped by outside of us, that I mean, and the outside is only a reflection of the inside anyways. It's all mirrored out so that you can see what is within. That's the only reason I watch the news, is to know what is unresolved within me. What am I pushing out to be observed? um, to learn to hold. Where does where am I being a tyrant still, and controlling and oppressing and starving parts of me to feed other parts, right? It's all just it's all your community trying to get your attention, to be held, to be loved. So that's why it says, the message is over and over: change outside in the world begins with you. The best thing you can do for the world is to start within, to heal within, to elevate yourself, to lift yourself up. And this is what we're doing, is helping, giving you tools, giving you clarity, giving you this conversation, so that you have somewhere to start, so that, we're not selling you anything. We just want to do the inner work with you. We're offering you that observer view, the friend that loves you view. You're safe here. We're going to love you.
Well, and I think so. Going back into that idea of individuation, once you find your real true self and you realize that there's all of these other levels of self, you start to become indivisible from other things around you. Everything becomes one, and you become one giant self, kind of the all, the universe, God, even in some ways. You become part of God that you kind of already were, but now you've given yourself to that in some ways, but you're still this individual piece of it. And you think about your cell, that, skin cell that does its one little part, but there's, billions and trillions of other skin cells doing theirs, and all of these other different things. It's all part of one, but builds the body. And I think that's the beauty behind it, is that once you realize who you truly are, you start to get into those spaces of, where am I trying to control these things, and how can I be more one with all of these different elements? You're always talking about, just like you were talking about now, how can I include this darkness as part of myself? How can I include this as part of who I am and the things that I think about, and accept these as part of life? And I think that's the process of individuation, is identifying your true self and then becoming one with everything. It's the as above, so below, and so below as whatever, as below, so above, or the above is of the below, and the below is of the above, as
Yeah.
Elian translates it.
Yeah.
That you are infinitesimally small and infinitely large at the same time. There's no end to who you are. And I think that's where meditation gets down into, is looking deeper inside of that, understanding the thoughts. Where did that thought come from? Oh, it came from my gut, because my gut has this sensation. And that's the fun part too, is a lot of the stuff that I look at is with tension in the body. The tension a lot of times is tied to a thought that's in the brain. And I had someone digging up on my shoulder the other day, and I just had these thoughts processing through my head, and I'm like, oh, there's that. There's that. I didn't know that was tied in there. Oh, I relaxed that. Oh, wow, that's a lot of relief there. It's crazy how it's all connected.
Yeah. And anybody who can recognize these things, you'll actually see me doing that process as we speak sometimes. If I feel pain in my body, I'll put my hands on it to let it know that I feel it, I see it, I hear it, I'm holding it, and just being unconditional as I listen, I will actually bring it out of myself to observe it. Because there's a lot of times I get nauseous by sitting up. The lights hurt my eyes. The nauseous will often, come with heart pain. And so there's a lot of stuff, and just naming it brings it out into my awareness. And another thing that you said, I will actually go to the dark all the time. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, how light and fluffy it is. I want to address the dark, the stuff that's in the shadows. And it reminds me of the Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu. It says, know the light, but stick to the dark. And I think, that's what I've been finally learning to embrace, is, all of this stuff that my whole life has been, my name means happy. It also means moon and reward and gift and all this, but so outwardly I've always just been happy and unfazed and all this stuff, but I've always been really dark, inwardly, privately to myself. And I've never, like, I remember since being a kid, well, part of it is because I survived a fatal car accident and lost the ability to feel. But that helped me not be judgmental about the really demented thoughts that I would have. So I'm comfortable in the darkness. I'm comfortable with other people's darkness, and I want people to be that peaceful. I want it to be normalized that this isn't, it doesn't mean anything about you that you have certain thoughts. It doesn't mean that, I mean, these are, like we said, these are trillions of memories that you have passed down through your cells. Most of what comes to you doesn't come from you. It's coming through you. It's trying to be expressed, it's trying to be heard, it's trying to be held, it's trying to be healed. So it doesn't serve anybody, not your past, not your future, to judge it. So that's why you'll see me going to the dark often. I just naturally want to gravitate and hold it and make
I
it.
think that's something that I've been thinking about this week. I've been getting back into some metal type music, and usually I love this very chillax music and this kind of folky or spiritual type music. But recently I've been kind of getting into that dark side, that dark metal kind of music, and I'm reading and listening to the words, and it's these beautiful emotional words that they are trying to express for their confusion in life, for their searching of what is real a lot of the times. And I think sometimes we get lost in that. What is real? Especially when you start getting into meditation, you're like, whoa, what the freaking heck is real anymore? Because I don't even know that I can trust my own senses sometimes, because you have the cells that send signals into the body, and then your brain has all these levels of interpretation, and then your brain has to interpret everything, and it doesn't even perceive everything that's going on. You see that the video of like the monkey walking through a bunch of basketball things, and so it's this really beautiful thing. And you watch some of these metalheads that are creating this music, and they're just some of the most bubbly, bouncy people, but they've just chosen to be in that darkness and to find the light in the darkness. And it reminds me of the allegory of the cave, which I had a bunch of issues with, because you have to go read the story if you haven't read it yet. But the story is that you're in the cave and you're watching these shadows play, and you're creating these stories about the shadows, and then you get the freedom to turn around and you see what's creating the shadows, and then you progress up out of the cave and you start seeing a light at the end, and you realize that there's more to life than just the shadows that were playing in front of you. But at the same time, what happens when that light is too bright and you stop being able to see things? What happens when you're creating stories about the things that you're seeing outside of the cave? What happens in this? How much story are you going to add to the senses that you're having? In some ways, it's better to be just stuck in that same spot, seeing the shadows.
And
Are you any
stories that
better
you're
from that?
creating about the darkness now that you're in the light.
Say that again.
I said, and the stories that now you're creating about the darkness now that you're in the light.
Yeah. Is and even when you're in the darkness, the smallest little bit of light becomes more magnificent to you, something that you wouldn't have noticed before. So there's something to being in that dark place, in that space of complete darkness.
Mm-hmm. I think it ties back into like what I was saying about traveling through the body and going back. You need to keep going back to the darkness. Know the light, understand it, see that, like just go out there to the light to notice what you created or said about the darkness if it's not serving you. But, you know, there's so much beautiful art that can be created in the darkness and the suffering and the in that. So keep going back into the cave, keep going back into the darkness. And then, you know, and being in it, create your stories about it so that you keep creating. And then, you know, go visit the light to see, to observe it, to observe the thing you just created, to keep you sort of grounded and free from the grip that those creations could have on you.
Yeah, I think about the more intense light you have, or the more light you have, the more shadows you create.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we're blinded by that light, creating the shadows, casting the shadows down below. You know, all these people that love light and goodness, and I'm one of those people. You know, I've always felt like light is the place to be. I've always been optimistic, mostly, but um I built that persona for a long time of always being optimistic and always looking at the light. And then, you know, more in more recent years, looking at that, what is it that I'm actually hiding in the shadows? And now that I'm looking into the shadows and like unraveling myself, it's creating this big mess and chaos in my own life. But at the same time, I'm at least getting to know myself. And I feel like I have more compassion towards other people. I'm not so judgmental about what other people are doing or who they are, because I understand more about myself. I'm accepting more of that darkness for who I am and what it is that's inside me and the shadows that are there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's I think there's beauty to both sides of it. You know, the optimism of the light is a beautiful place, but there's a reason we have contrast. You know, there's a reason that in the Bible they talk about the fruit of good and evil, the duality between the fruit. You know, you've suddenly had this dynamic of the light and the dark, the pain and the joy, the suffering and the happiness. That contrast creates this beautiful spectrum of everything that exists around us. And a lot of times our own pain and suffering is just us creating stories around sensations that we don't find comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't have to be a intense sensation to be super uncomfortable and painful for us. There are a lot of people that are very sensitive and shy away from a lot of those sensations.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of this what's that called? Power versus Force
Hmm.
book. And there's a lot of, or at least an increasing number of like people or programs that use this muscle testing to determine what's true or real. But all it's really doing is telling you what you've been gripped by,
Mm.
what's real for you, because these things can change. Like some healing modalities will use it to see where you're resonating at the moment. Um, and they'll correct it within you. And then all of a sudden, you know, you've just, you know, become somebody who now sugar is medicine for you, right? Because that issue that it's telling you where in the collective you're resonating, what truths that people have fed you, you have bought. So my point is, don't be gripped by anything. That's been my whole process, because my injury was it was a chemical spill in my van, my work van. I won't say the company, but you know who they are. They have blue vans. Um, they I had a chemical spill, and it has me mostly bedridden for the past almost 4 years now. 4 years next month. So maybe 2 years into it, I decided I'm gonna learn to transmute poison to medicine. So that's been my focus. So now I'm learning to unidentify with everything that people tell me about what's true, because I don't have the right conditions. I'm in the dark most of the time, and this is also why I'm like, I'm gonna grow. I'm gonna strengthen myself in the darkness. This is why I point to the Shaolin monks, who've trained themselves in these harsh conditions and abusive whatever conditions, that they've put themselves into these positions to train themselves, right? So this is how I've been treating my own thing, is I'm gonna strengthen myself in all of these things that people call weak, or call the things that are going to make you weak. And it ain't easy, folks. That's why I'm still struggling with so much, because I bought into so many things that I don't even know. So this is why I'm slowing way the heck down so that I can hear all of it, and I'm saying it out loud so that I can hear it, so that I can bring it out and in front of me. But putting yourself either in the light or the dark and dwelling in it is how you get hooked by people, because you're just going to attract all the stuff that's going to align with your current beliefs or where you're dwelling, right? That's why it's so easy to convince you that there's a perfect diet, that there's a perfect all this, that you have to stay in the light as much as possible, that it's all about positivity. And it's so easy to hook us, because we're not going back and forth from the light and the dark, because we're being so attached to what people say instead of learning what is within. The
Yep.
end.
That's what I've been talking to myself a lot about, is looking at all these voices that are inside my head and all these different things. And even like the church that I've come from, they're always talking about read your scriptures and pray and listen to the leaders and um and there's a reason they say that, because that will keep your mind in that space of what of that culture, really. The culture of your mind, you're going to be attracted to that culture, and you're going to keep seeking that out, and that'll be feeding your mind over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And so my question has been, what is my true voice, and what are the voices that I'm putting inside my head, that have come from outside places? um, and that's been a big question for my own meditation, is what's my own voice? What is it that speaks true inside of me? And that's the question that I think we all can struggle with. And what is that? What is it that we talk about our true authentic self, but I'm like, I don't know, I like everything. I could agree with almost anything if you get me going with it, if I allow myself to open up to it. And so what is my true authentic self? I have no idea, really. And I think that's the point of that kind of meditative training, is to ask yourself, where did this come from? is this my voice? How does it fit into the world, and where is it? And so this, this next few days, I'm going to be going on a long camping trip just to be silent from the world, just be out in nature and say, all right, what's in my head?
Mhm.
What's it going to be like to just be completely silent with everything else going on around me, and have that time for just that quiet meditation.
Mhm. I was just thinking of how this is not your typical meditation conversation, right? We're not talking about techniques. We're not talking about anything, any tricks or tips about it. We're just saying what it is, and that you're always in it, and
Yeah,
just having a conversation. I'm also looking at these things, and I'm thinking, is this why our friend, we have a mutual friend who's been saying that I'm Medusa lately, and I'm like, are these my snakes? Are the like these little curlies? Is this why she's saying that I'm Medusa? Um,
nice.
and I don't know I'm gonna have to look into the story of Medusa or why she's pointing that out. But now even I'm like, oh, maybe I should look into this story a little bit more because I only know the story that we've been told about Medusa that paints her in a negative light, creating the dude as the hero. Um, but I hear there's a lot of trauma with, in the real story, so I'm gonna look into that now. Now that I see my little snake.
Usually, yeah. Usually that's how the bad and the evil are in the world. They're very traumatized in a lot of ways, and
Mhm.
people don't. They look at them as bad and evil, but what are they holding down inside? Like, what's caused them to hold the beliefs that they're holding, and why are they feeling the way they do?
Mhm.
And that can be in our own mind too. Why do we feel the way we do? Why is it that we feel like? And I think that's something we always feel like we're doing the right thing, except for whenever we're in that space of like, I think whatever action we're doing at the time, we feel like we're trying to do what is necessary or what is right or what is going to help us in that moment. Even when like even if we're doing some drug and that we don't really want to do it, but we feel like we need it, we're still doing something that we feel is going to help us out, is going to cut the pain or cut whatever it is. And so, how much are people out there doing whatever they're doing to try to fix the problem, to try to end suffering or to do whatever? And once you start looking at that, you don't see good and evil. You just say, "Wow, you're a person that's hurting a lot, and I see you, and that's amazing." And when you start looking at that in yourself, you start looking at yourself and saying, "Wow, I'm a person that hurts a lot too. I have a lot of pain and sensation and suffering that's going on inside of me." It gives you so much more compassion for those who are doing those hard things, that are that feel like they're doing the right thing by creating war or fighting for some specific cause, or even, you think about the Nazis and being stuck in that place of, as a soldier, having to do all these horrid things, but you're just doing what you feel like you need to do to survive,
Mhm.
to get through whatever is happening at that time.
You reminded me of a woman I met, um, who had this like massive guilt, like this view of herself because she had gone to jail for doing drugs. Um, and the view that she had of herself because of that. And I told her that, like what you were saying, I what is it like I first decriminalized it mentally for her and then gave her context for why she does it. the same context, like you're reaching for something to help you through a certain state. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be and feel better. And you could see the freedom that she felt in her face, the the beginning of being able to forgive herself for doing something. I said, that is something that somebody else calls a crime. It's not what it is. It's not what's happening. There may be these consequences in the moment, but that has nothing to do with you. Um, and I think if we could help people, I mean, I've helped people through giving context in this way, help people heal uh, by helping them not villainize or make this into something or humanize, like, and see why they do the thing, and help them see where the self-love is in that process. I think we could help so many people work through their issues, the things that they turn to help them feel better. If we can give them context for why they're doing it. Like, oh well, if I'm just doing this for relief, if I'm just doing this for this, and if I'm doing it because I love myself, well, what else can I do that's going to give me the same or better results, that's not going to actually cause harm? Or you can look at it like, the only reason it causes me harm is because I feel this guilt about it because of what people have said about it. Just like the people who are trying to quit smoking, right? In native or indigenous communities or beliefs, tobacco is sacred. But because they've added the filter, they've added the all this story into the filter, and context around it, they've turned the medicine into poison. By starting to say that it is, that it's killing you, that it's all this stuff. So I often think, if somebody's telling me something's bad for me, maybe that's where the medicine is. Maybe that's where I should be looking. So no matter what I consume, I just say, this is medicine. This is where the medicine is for me. It's all about reframing it, knowing the full context of, somebody else created that story, I didn't make this unclean, I didn't make this bad and wrong, someone else did it.
Yep. Yep, and there's a lot of baggage that we carry in the world because of that, because somebody else said something, somebody else put shame into an action or into a whatever it is. And
Created a whole science around it.
oh yeah. Yeah, and that's half the issue I have with science these days, is that you have a question, and so then you go answer that question, but what formed the answer was the question itself. And so a lot of our science has been based off of these questions that have been based off of philosophy and our culture, and a lot of these things that are going on around who we are as a society. And a lot of our science that we have is very specific to Europe and the US, and very English based speaking areas. Hardly ever do we look at the science that's happening in China or Russia or some of these other places that have different laws and regulations and different language and culture, and just in general.
Mm-hmm. I know people who have met people who've worked in like these, in the government or things like that, places where people know secrets, right? And they, when they communicate that like literally everything that you can prove true can also be proven false. They have documents and evidence and all these mountains of things piled up to make one thing absolutely true and absolutely false at the same time.
Yep.
um
It's philosophy.
and yeah, like on Truth and Lies, right? The book that Friedrich Nietzsche, um that we had to read for alchemy, it speaks on that. It's like the people, we're so impressed with ourselves by digging up the very thing that we just, buried into the ground. Like, oh, look at what I discovered. It's this thing that I buried a long time ago, right? It's true now
Yeah.
because I just dug it up, right? And it also reminds me of one of Elian's lives that she was on. She says, history is, and I think it's recorded, history is just lies upon lies. Like, you know, yeah. So don't be too attached to anything you hear. Uh, it's
Well, and
just
I have
perspective.
this issue with lies. Like, I don't know that I want to say lies, but just narratives. It's
Yeah.
just the narrative that we're holding, the perspective, the view that we are seeing something as. Like the seven blind monks trying to figure out what an elephant is. And yeah, one of them says it to snake, and one of them says it to tree, and one, all these different things. It's just, they don't know. It's just the
Yeah.
perspective from the one part that they're looking at
Well,
or
some of them
feeling.
know. Some of them know they're rewriting it. um, I have no problem with the word lies. And you just reminded me of standing on a stage where I called myself a liar because um because when I'm creating something, it's initially a lie. I don't believe it. Um, and I've got to tell the lie over and over before I believe it, before it becomes manifest. So I'm taking the power out of the word lie. Even though that wasn't my choice of words, I would totally call it narrative as well. Um, it just reminded me of that moment, taking the power out of. I used to say things that triggered people all the time. Uh, it was fun. And it didn't occur to me that it wasn't going to land the way that I had intended it until my classroom leader called me out on it. Like, you really like to say things that trigger people, don't
They created the trigger, not me.
you? Yeah. I mean, this way. Yeah. But this is something that I said I wanted to get out of doing this practice, is to be more mindful about what I'm saying and creating context. So I'm glad you called it out.
There you go.
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I think that's a good stopping point there.
Yeah.
Thanks, shifties.
Yes. Thanks for listening. If you're still here with us, if we've pulled you in and told you all our truths,
All our
whatever.
perspectives.
Yeah. Do whatever our truths and lies and make something of it for yourself. Don't discover your own thing. Don't take it too much to heart. If anything
And
I
truth
said,
is just existence. And if a lie exists, then it technically is a truth.
mhm. It reminds me of something that they used to say in programs I was doing. If anything I've said today um, doesn't work for you, I take it back.
No, no, just reject it. I'm not taking it back.
I'm taking it back from they don't have to it's mine. I give it context. It's my thing to do whatever I want to. It's me taking responsibility for what I'm putting out in the world. So you don't have to take it back. I'm taking it back.
Nope. What I shed, I shed. And if I want to heal something with somebody, I'll heal that. And
Yeah.
there'll be more stuff that I shed.
All right.
But I can't be responsible for everybody else's triggers. So.
Oh no, I'm not being responsible. I'm just saying you don't have to accept it. It's mine.
Yeah.
Give it back to me. Yeah, that's it.
Shed your own shift.
That's right. Wipe your own shift. I got my shift. I'm taking care of my shift. We're just talking shift over here. You know, shift talking hosts.
Yep. All right. Now go be the shift.
That's right. Be the shift. The end.